everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast, where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And welcome to this week's probably exceptionally short weekly recap, because we also kind of did a weekly recap earlier this week. It's kind of weird whenever you have to adjust schedules to, how different things have been going, but we're here. We're here doing a weekly recap. And of course, we're here to do the most important part of the show, and that is say thank you to Grandma. Thank you, Grandma. And if you want to support the show financially, you'll never be on the same level as Grandma, but check out the merch store. But the big piece of news before we get into the rest of the show is the women's basketball game. The Wildcat battle, the battle for the scratching post, as I think we dubbed it in football. And that is the Arizona Wildcats coming to Bramlage Coliseum. K-State ends up beating them pretty comfortably, 62-47. And that is despite the fact that K-State honestly looked pretty pedestrian for the majority of the game. And at times, there were a lot of times where Arizona, I don't want to say outright that they looked like the better team, but they certainly were giving K-State they weren't making it very comfortable for us.
Yeah, this was definitely not a banner day for Kansas State, unfortunately. They had moments and little stretches where they looked like their normal selves, but by and large, this wasn't a super impressive game for the Cats. There were a few individually decent performers, and it felt like when we really needed to lock in, we did, which has kind of been how this team has operated for a lot of the year. Like whenever our opponent kind of starts making a run, Medi just calls a timeout and tells them to try, and then we do that, and then we go on like a 15-0 run. This game kind of had elements of that, although most of the time those runs were shorter up until kind of the fourth quarter when K-State finally was able to stretch it out more. But yeah, this wasn't K-State's greatest day, but any day where you can kind of have just kind of an okay game and hold your opponent under 50 and win by 15, that's a pretty good day, all things considered.
Yeah, and it was on the broadcast. So Connor was actually at this game. It was on the broadcast that Brian Smoller said that you're going to have, and this is a quote from Mitty, you're going to have 10 games where you play your best basketball, 10 games where you play horribly, and 10 games where you just kind of play okay. And the trick is to just finding the ways to win those games that you don't play your best. And to me, that's kind of exactly what this was finding a way to win this game and escape despite not playing their best basketball, which, I can get into the starters here. I think the most notable one is Serena Sundell, who actually went the distance in this game, playing all 40 minutes, got 16 points on 7 of 5 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3, however, what was 2 of 2 on her free throws, had 4 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 foul, 4 turnovers, a block, and a steal. So a 3-point makeaway from fully stuffing the stat sheet. Unfortunate that it didn't happen, but again, at this point, that's like an average Serena Sundell performance, which is kind of terrifying to think about, because that's like a career day for a lot of people.
Yeah, Serena was, again, really excellent in this game. I don't have anything to add other than she seems to finally be getting that she can just take over at will. And it's
finally, she got the Dean Wade talk.
Yeah, and somehow later than Dean Wade figured it out. Like Dean Wade figured it out, kind of a third of the way through his junior season. It's taken Serena until she's a senior to figure it out, which I'd rather she learned than not at all. It's just that, everybody on earth could see that she could do this the whole time, and she it's just kind of been a little too selective. But no, she's been really deadly in that kind of mid-range jumper where she is shooting when she's coming down from her jump, which is really janky to watch it, because It just does not look right because it's not. But she's really good at it. So regard her.
I mean, it's not wrong and it's not stupid if it works.
Now, I will agree that it's not wrong. I will disagree on you saying it's not stupid because it is stupid. It works for her, so that's fine.
It's a results-driven business. Anyway, the next most notable performance, to me at least, is Tamira Poindexter, and she got 14 points in 24 minutes, 5 of 11 from the field, 4 of 8 from 3, 0 of 1 on her free throw attempts, 2 rebounds, 1 foul, 2 turnovers, and a steal. And those threes honestly came at pretty big times because she had one to open the game, and then she had one to sort of break K-State out of a lull in the back half of the game, which I'm not going to lie to you, that third quarter had me worried just because of, how sluggish that we kind of looked on the offensive side and how the shots just kind of weren't falling for us. But Tamira Poindexter has really stepped up as of late in conference play, and it's been really, really good to watch because she had a little bit of time where she was just kind of okay, right before conference play, but she's really, really stepped it up as of late. And we said before the season that she was actually going to be one of the key pieces to this team. So it's really good to see her step up in a situation like this. Everyone else was, at least the rest of the starters were relatively pedestrian. Zai Walker, 5 points in 16 minutes and 2 of 3 from the field, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 fouls, 3 turnovers. Then Jalen Glenn, 2 points, 1 of 4 from the field, and 6 total rebounds, 4 assists, 1 foul, 1 turnover in 37 minutes. And then lastly, Ayoka Lee with, I believe, her lowest scoring output game of the year with 6 points, 20 minutes, only 1 made field goal, but 4 of 4 on her free throw attempts, 6 total rebounds, 2 turnovers, 8 blocks, which matched as a career high, and 2 steals. So really, at least from the starters, it was the Tamira Poindexter and Serena Sundell show featuring a few others.
Yeah, Ayoka Lee was mostly held in check this game. Arizona really just went all out on denying passing windows to Ayoka Lee. And most teams try to do that, but aren't as effective as Arizona was. And I think our entry passes weren't the best today either. And it also didn't help that we kind of were more stubborn with getting her the ball than we have been in the past. So we're a little less willing to adapt at times, particularly I felt like in the third quarter. I felt like that because Yogi only played like 5 minutes in the first half because of how they were defending her. But still, it's pretty unbelievable that Ayoka Lee only attempted 1 field goal in this game. Only officially attempted 1 field goal. She had a couple others where she went to the line, but still not what you would expect from a winning stat line for K-State. Of course, other than the 8 blocks, which is just ludicrous.
Yeah, that's just funny. It gets to a point where, even if she wasn't getting her normal offensive production, she was still contributing defensively because Arizona's post player, really, really good. I forget her name, which is hilarious because I could quite literally just look it up. I have the box score in front of me.
Yoki's
Isis Bay.
Yeah. Yoki's 8 blocks do speak, I think, to just the defensive quality the K-State played with for really a majority of the game. They held Arizona to 47, and it was, I think, a 0.72 points per possession, which is really fantastic defensively. K-State offensively, I think they averaged exactly 1 point per possession because they had 62 points in 62 possessions, according to the box score, which, fine, sure. But,
yeah, we take those. But, Connor, you have the bench production.
Yeah. So not a ton of scoring from most of the bench, but fairly solid days all around here. Terrence Sides finished with 6 points, 2 of 7 from the field, but 2 of 5 from 3, including a really nasty step back 3 at one point that elicited a pretty audible reaction from the crowd. She added 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 fouls, and 2 turnovers. She played 24 minutes. So a pretty solid game for Taryn. all things considered. That 3-point percentage, even though she did go 2 of 5, that's probably below 50% at this point, which is a shame. But she'll have plenty of opportunities to get it back up. That takes us to Kennedy Taylor. Not her best game, honestly. Only 2 points, 1 of 2 from the field, and her miss was it was a bunny that she should have hit. Which she's kind of had issues with that this year, but added 3 rebounds. Only played 7 minutes. Eliza Maupin had 2 points, 1 of 1 from the field, and then just had a foul. Only played 3 minutes. Gisela Sanchez, in what was a revenge game for her, as a former Arizona player herself, had 9 points, 3 of 7 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3, only 1 of 4 on her free throws, 3 rebounds, a foul, a couple turnovers, and a steal. She had that one stretch, I think, in the second quarter where she had like 8 points in like a minute. And that was the extent of it for Gisela, but she did kind of go unconscious there for a brief moment.
The peak revenge game status for Gisela.
It's kind of generous to call it a revenge game, which I was calling it a revenge game during the court. That's not me calling you out. I'm just now, as I'm thinking about it, it was more of a revenge like moment.
Yeah, revenge moment. Revenge. I don't know, 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, that's about what it came down to. But all in all, a solid enough performance for Gisela. She still had a few moments where she wasn't at her best, but keep in mind she's coming back from a broken hand as well, so she's probably playing through some pain and isn't probably 100% right now either. Last player, Imani Lester, did not attempt a field goal in this game, had 3 rebounds, 2 fouls, and a steal. Played 12 minutes, coming down a little bit from from a stretch of fairly decent outings from her. I just don't think she was a great matchup for Arizona's post players, because I just don't think her defense was great. I don't think there's much more she could have done either. But that's just not a side of her. It just wasn't her night, really, defending. But yeah, all in all, some decent supporting roles from K-State's bench in this game.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's really all that they needed for this game. I mean, just getting – it's sort of one of those games where everyone contributed, and that's a sign of you've successfully built depth, which is so difficult to do. I mean, it was difficult to do even before the NIL era, and nowadays it's even more difficult. And this isn't me like having a boomer rant about the NIL era and NIL being bad. It's just a fact of life that it's a bit more difficult to get that depth whenever you have anyone just looking, I'm going to look for, first off the bench or starting opportunities. And I think that's my biggest takeaway with this team is just the amount of buy-in that they've had from the quote unquote depth pieces. And I mean, that's what you have to have if you want to succeed in pretty much any level of basketball, but especially high level, Division I basketball. So it's really good to see.
Yeah, and I think it's probably especially obvious right now as a stark contrast to some other basketball going on in the general vicinity. But we don't have to comment on it any further because we're refraining, we're abstaining.
Yeah, actually, there is no other basketball. There is no Warren Bossing say. But of course, the biggest story is the people in Provo. I'll use the word people because it's the kind way to refer to the villains who stole. Let's call it what it is. It's stealing. They stole Gap Goat 1.0 from the K-State women's team. Fortunately, for Gap Goat there is reincarnation. So there is another Gap Goat. That one is fine. But I mean, Connor, how do you react to just the heinous acts of the people of Provo, Utah in stealing Gap Goat?
It was monstrous, really. I've never felt so low in my entire life. I'm officially calling upon the United States federal government to launch an invasion into this occupied territory of Utah and begin a. We need to send in SEAL Team 6 to find the compound that they have imprisoned Gappy at.
We need to hashtag free Gappy immediately.
Yeah,
we do not negotiate.
It's crazy how, if you kidnap one type of kid, you get an Amber Alert, but you kidnap another type of kid, it's just silence.
But, of course, we are happy that there is a different Gap Goat and that the reincarnated Gap Goat found their way home. But in more serious, quote unquote, news, is we actually are going to pick up track coverage again because, it went so well last time. But but this is a worthy little bit of recruiting news to cover with the track team. I mean, which it's a start to a different era under Geffert. So we'll give them their deserved minutes under the sun.
Yeah, they've brought in a ton of new recruits. They most recently brought in 14 recruits that they announced the signing of this past Tuesday, January 14th. And some of them have some really incredible accolades, and some of them you kind of go down go down some of their personal bests and compare that with some of the times or distances or whatever measurement you have from the outdoor national championships last year, and you're like, wow, these people, they would have been like competing for gold medals at nationals last year. There's some really incredible individual talent that is being brought in, as well as some a lot of Power 5 transfers as well. Oscars Bambles is a University of Miami transfer, and he's a middle distance runner. He has he's a 3-time national record holder in Latvia. And another guy, let me find him here real quick. Selva Prabhu from India. He had a 55-foot, 0.75 inch triple jump. That would have been second place nationally last year. So, and he's only 19. Which, shocking that you hire 2 Olympic gold medalists, one of who being the Olympic gold medalist in women's long jump, and all of a sudden you start attracting long jump recruits and long jump talent.
Oh, word! Is that how that works?
It's weird how that happens.
Man, that's crazy. Like, I never would have believed that would happen.
Yeah, shocking, honestly. But multiple transfers from University of Arkansas, multiple transfers from KU as well, which KU has actually been a fairly decent program in track as of late. And then a guy from Wichita, or from Mays, I should say, Alan Hanna, he had a high jump last year. He'll be a freshman of 2.14 meters, which that would have put him, I think, just on the edge of making the finals for the high jump at the outdoors last year. But I mean, he won 5A easily. I mean, the dude's high jumping 2 meters. He's winning Kansas 5A.
Yeah. Word. Yeah.
But,
I think
does have more good high jumpers than you would expect. Like 2 guys that finished, I think, nationally top 10 last year are from Kansas. One of them is at KU. One of them is at Nebraska, which is kind of strange. But there's been a lot of high jump talent in Kansas as of late. A lot of track talent generally. But in the early signing period, they also signed, I think it was the triple jump national champion at junior college, They have brought in just really across the board a ton of talent in field events, as well as some like middle and long distance. Really, the only area where we're still, I'd say, not really like taking a noticeable step forward is kind of in sprints, which K-State's never really been like a sprint school, like at any point, from what I can tell. Definitely not in my lifetime. Like that's always been like your Texases, your Oregons, your Arkansas, which maybe if you build that, it'll come. But regardless, I mean, Gefford, in his first 6 months as the director of track and field at K-State, he's brought in 34 new recruits, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, and they're all really high level recruits as well. Which I mean, K-State for a long time was kind of known as for both their high jump, mostly because of one athlete, and then a bunch of pentathlons. Because Connor, I remember you and I had this discussion at a random Batcats game, funnily enough, like a few years ago, where you just looked at me and said, like, we may not have like the best at like high jump hurdles, but you know what? Or like hurdles or, a bunch of other different field events. But damn it, we have a bunch of pentathlon athletes.
Yeah, that's kind of what we've had. And high jump has always been something K-State's been good at. Obviously, Eric Kennard's the big name, but TJ Shankar recently, he won the national championship, I think, back in 21, maybe, for K-State, and he was really good. It helps that, for Cliff Revelto, the old head coach, he was, I think, the U.S. High jump coach for a really long time. But yeah, it was a pretty unbelievable group of athletes that are being brought in, because I mean, like, track isn't really like a sport that I think K-State fans pay a ton of attention to. I think very few schools do. Oregon, obviously, and then Arkansas. I think Arkansas makes a pretty big deal with track, but I think Geffert really wants to actually kind of turn K-State into that, because he's been quoted a few times as saying that he wants to expand K-State's recently renovated old football training facility that was recently renovated into the new indoor track facility. He wants to expand that and put in 3,000 seats, because that's what you have to have, I think, to host the Big 12 indoor meet. So he really wants to do that, I think, and he seems sincere to me, and so I'll choose to believe him.
So could you say that he really wants to elevate the track program?
He didn't come here to build; he came here to elevate.
Boy. Anyway, do you have any more notes about the track team or anything else before we sign off, and also, just let the people know that the Batcats preview will be coming next week?
I don't think so. I tried to hit the highlights of these, but I mean, it's hard to really fit in 35 different athletes into a single episode that we're trying to keep kind of short. All this information is on K-State's website. Just go to the track and field page, and there should be a link to the story about the 14 most recent ones, and in that story there's a link to the article about the first crop of recruits. And if you go on their Twitter page and you scroll around enough, you'll find all the signee announcements as well. So I mean, this is not hidden information.
We're not leaking anything.
Yeah, this is not secrets. This is if you're listening to this, you presumably have internet access. So unless you have someone put it on a USB drive for you and you plug it in a CD player or something. But
which you're listening to this in the future, where you can just download episodes of the Aggieville Alleycats to your brain. First off, don't do that to yourself. Welcome.
Yeah, that I wouldn't do that, so you certainly should not. But
yeah, the Batcats preview will be coming next week, and it's a very exciting Batcats team, mostly because in a lot of ways they kind of mirror the football team. And I won't be elaborating until we do the preview episode. So any final notes before we sign off and leave these wonderful people to their day?
nothing yet. Nothing yet.
All right. Well, if that's the case, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdward00.
I am at Connor Balthasar, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store. The link found in our podcast and Twitter bios. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. For come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.